Hello, Tracy here with another scrapbooking process video, this time using the November kit from the Scraptastic Kit Club called Ain't No Sunshine. It's a great kit with lots of yellows and pinks, and I'm also using a sketch from Creating with Sketches, which is put out by the Creative Scrappers website. I'm going to have a link to that website, actually to the shop for that website, in the information section for this video. It is a series of sketches done by Christine Davidson, and the website has lots of free sketches, and then you can also buy an ebook of sketches. There are 3 volumes that are out now. I'm using a sketch from page 45 of volume 2 today. So first I'm having a look at pardon me for my voice, I still have a hoarse voice from my cold, but I'm looking at all of the pattern papers from the kit that I have left over. I did get the extra pattern paper add-on this month, and so, well, in the month of November, I get it every month, or almost every month. So anyhow, I do have a lot of leftover pattern paper, and which makes it really easy to, pick papers for layouts, even after you've made several layouts with a kit. So I'm scrapbooking this photo here that you saw me. There's the sketch that I'm using. I'm just showing you that it's from this book and that it's from page 45. You will see more of that sketch later on. But first I'm just going to pick some papers to coordinate with this photo. It's a photo of a book, it's a great book. I really enjoyed it, but it's not necessarily about this book as much as it is about my resolution to read more in 2016. And that was just a lovely book there. It was taken at Christmas time. You can see my Christmas tree in the background, but this is not going to be a Christmas themed layout at all. I have a couple of things in mind here. The first thing is that this whole layout was really inspired by a layout by Kelly Rayburn, who is a Scraptastic Kit Club member, and she posted a layout in the Scraptastic Club Facebook group that used a whole lot of black. And I was really inspired by that, and she did a lot of really heavy inking around all of her pattern papers. And I don't typically do a whole lot of inking these days, but what sort of inspired me was just her use of really dark, bold inking that ends up looking a lot like outlining or matting. And so I decided that for this layout, I'm going to mat everything in that black paper from Authentique that came in the kit. So you see that I've matted my photo in it already. And now I'm going to be cutting some circles. And this is going to end up causing me some grief eventually, but not here. It's going to work well at this point. So I have my Cutter Bee Curvy Cutter, which is a tool that allows you to cut different sizes of circles. And so I started off with this piece of paper from My Mind's Eye, this yellow paper. It's from the My Story collection. And now I'm going to attempt to cut a circle out of this Authentique dark paper that also came in the kit. And I want this circle to be just slightly bigger than the yellow pattern paper. And so I have to play around a little bit, pardon my head here. I have to play around a little bit with the settings in order to get this to be a proper mat. And this looks quite good, and I'm happy with it. It's a nice perfect circle inside of another nice perfect circle. I like that, but you know what? It's just a tiny, tiny bit bigger than what I wanted it to be, and the mat in particular is thicker than I want it to be. The mat is more similar to the size of the mat on the photo, but I want all of the matting on all of my pattern papers to be quite a bit thinner, so I'm going to come back to that and fix it, but it's going to cause me some grief. Anyhow, in the meantime, I'm cutting a strip for the strip that goes behind the main circle on the layout. That comes from the sketch. I'm following the sketch quite closely for this layout, and you will see the sketch a little bit later. Now, I often just freehand cutting my flags on a banner. But this time I really want it to, because I'm using circles, I just want it to look very even and symmetrical. So this is my method for making perfect fishtails. You just fold the paper in half, and then you measure in the same amount on the fold, and then you cut from the fold to the outside corner of the paper. Did I describe that right? I hope that that made sense. Anyhow, I also did it. So if you didn't catch that, then maybe just rewind and look at it again. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions about that. But it's pretty self-explanatory if you just watch it. So now I'm going to freehand cut this because I've already cut the inside one pretty evenly, and so it's easy for me to just kind of leave a bit of a border on the outside. And there we go. Again, that border is looking a little bit too big for me, so I'm going to trim part of it down, but then I realized that using that Fisker trimmer for such precise trimming is really not the best. Sorry, I turned off the lights there just to see if it would help to use the light on my trimmer, but it actually doesn't because that authentique paper is way too thick and the light doesn't shine through. So I turn my lights back on and I'm just using the trimmer with my eyes. So this is more the size, and this trimmer allows you to get these little tiny slivers. I'm going to show you in a second. See how tiny those slivers are? They actually shrivel up. They're so tiny. That is more the size of border that I want on this circle as well. So here we go. I'm going to try to cut this smaller, and it's going to occur to me that there's no way I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't figure, I have to get the circle placed absolutely perfectly in the center in order for it to work properly. And then I thought, maybe I'm just being too fussy. I'm going to put this away and just deal with the fact that this mat is bigger than I'd like it to be, but it's going to irritate me. I'm going to revisit it eventually. So I'm trying to use black on this layout in the same way that Kelly used it on her layout, meaning I want a fairly dark border around almost all of the elements. I wasn't looking at her layout while I did it. I just kind of had the memory of it. So I'm not sure if she did the really heavy, thick inking around every single paper, but I think she did it around most of them. And it looked really great with those black foam letter stickers, so which I'm going to use for my title today. So that was sort of where I was going with this. So I'm going to cut these circles. I did these are all my Mind's Eye papers so far that I'm using, and they all came in the kit. So the text one, and here I'm just showing you that sketch again so that you can see how I'm coming up with the circles. And now I have these little chipboard buttons that came in the kit that I'm hoping to use as some of the tinier circles on this layout, but I'm going to punch some with pattern papers. So I punched with the 3-inch board. With the 3-inch punch, I punched that paper that has handwritten text on it, and then with the 2-inch punch, I started with a 2.5-inch, but then I moved to the 2-inch punch for that really dark pink pattern paper with the chevron, and then I'm pretty sure I used a 1 3/8 inch punch. That's that circle, that yellow one there, for the eyeglasses paper. Again, that's also my Mind's Eye, and so is the florals. So far everything except for the black pattern paper that I'm using for my bold outlining of, it's actually matting, is all from my Mind's Eye, except the background paper is from crepe paper. So here we go. I'm going to try to cut some mats for these circles. I don't know why I thought that this would work. I guess I kind of had my heart set on using this circle cutter, which I don't use all that. I mean, in the course of my scrapbooking career or life or whatever you want to call it, I've used it many times. It certainly has paid for itself in terms of a handy tool to have. But I don't know why I had my heart set on using this tool for this purpose. You're going to see me struggle with this and struggle with this and struggle with this. So here we go. I'm going to try cutting it this way and see how we go. That's pretty good. And now I'm going to try to cut one for this. And I'm thinking about, I wasn't sure which punch I used, and I wasn't sure if the slightly larger punch would be a good border, but it was way too big. So yeah, I'm thinking about using my circle cutter again for this. There we go. So those two turned out okay using the circle cutter. And so here I'm like, so why can't this one work? I'm really going to try to get this one to work. So I don't know exactly how I cut that such that it was that yellow piece is just a tiny, tiny bit smaller than the inside of that tool. So here we go. Actually don't have the tool lined up in one of the channels properly, so that's why that one didn't really cut all that well. I was kind of freehanding it with the tool, which it didn't work right. It ended up coming out exactly the same size as the yellow piece of paper. So I need something that's in between those two dark matting circles. It needs to be smaller than the original one that I cut and bigger than the second one that I cut. So here we go. And now it's too small. Very frustrated here. I should have just given up. So the lesson that I learned from all of this is that sometimes you just have to know when to throw in the towel and say, this isn't working. I need to do something different. So I ended up cutting the yellow piece even smaller, and then I ended up with the exact same proportion of matting. And then I finally decided, you know what, I'm just going to freehand cut it. So when you're freehand cutting a circle, my tip for you is to keep your scissor hand as stable and steady as possible, and to move the paper, not the scissors. So just open and close the scissors and let them stay in one spot, and move the paper, and try to move it as smoothly with long, kind of continuous, instead of repositioning it all the time. Then you'll get lots of little tiny corners. It's not going to look perfect. It will never look as good as it did if you made it with a tool. You could also find something circular like a cup or a plate or something and trace it and then cut out a circle. There's lots of different options for cutting circles, of course. So here I go. I'm just using the punches basically to get a bit of a circular shape, and then I'm trimming these other circles with my scissors, as you see. And generally speaking, I try to get it right the first time. If I go back and fix it, I always end up making it worse. So I'm trying to just live with the imperfections and not try to touch it up. So you see me using a variety of different sized punches. One of them is a 1 inch, one of them is a 3/4 inch. And they're coming out a lot faster. If not perfect, they're at least faster and less frustrating. So, and yeah, this is just like a bit of a hot mess here. I'm cutting way more circles than what I actually need, and I'm messing around way more than I need to mess around. And so I really wanted to mat the flare badge as well, even though it's not a piece of pattern paper. It just makes it fit in with the other ones a lot better. So I wasn't happy with the one that I cut, so I'm going to cut another one. And I'm actually using another circle as a template there to just cut around just a little bit, just to make it a little tiny bit bigger than the other one. So, finally I'm finished cutting circles. That was a bit of a nightmare. So thank you for bearing with me through all of that frustration. At least you got to see it 4 times the speed. I had to actually suffer through that whole process. So now I get to go back to the fun part, which is composing this. And I'm following the sketch quite closely here. Right down to the little tiny dots. I'm putting them in almost exactly the same spots that Christine has them in her sketch. And I'm just pulling out some of the brads that came in the kit. These are also from my Mind's Eye, My Story. So almost everything on this layout is from that My Story collection. And I really love how this looks with the circles with the really dark matting around them, and I think it's going to look awesome with the black foam thickers. And I like that my photo is matted with a thicker border than everything else. So I brought you over to my sewing machine here. Sorry, pardon me. And I just had to rethread my sewing machine. My 10-year-old had been using it last. She was making a comforter for her American Girl doll. And so it had bright pink thread in the top and it had neon green in the bottom. I just left the neon green because you're not going to see it. And I keep my speed on medium. So my machine has a speed dial as well as the presser foot. So if you put the speed dial on high, then your presser foot will go super fast. But here's what I'm talking about. If I have that in between the turtle and the bunny, then it will, even when I'm pressing it down all the way, it will only go so fast. And remember, this is 4 times the speed, so I'm going quite a bit slower than it looks like I'm going. And there's that. And now for circle, I'm going to play around with my camera angle here, so I hope I don't make you motion sick when I move it, but I'm trying to show you how I'm sewing the circles. I was a little bit hesitant to do some sewing on these circles because I typically make a mess when I try to sew circular, but I try to not avoid it and just do it anyways because, as they say, practice makes perfect. And I did notice that this circle is significantly better than any circle I've ever sewn before. So that's why I changed the angle to show you how I'm doing it, just so that you might be able to learn while I learn. So I have my speed lower than it was before even. And I'm going very slow, and I'm paying less attention to where the needle is going into the paper and more attention to where I'm pointing there. What I think I'm going to point again. So I'm looking at the markings on the front of my machine and where the presser foot is, and I'm paying more attention to where my paper is in relation to some of those markers, kind of like using them as a guide. So there, see where I'm pointing? I'm paying more attention to those places that I pointed than I am to where, and every time that I look over to see where the needle is going into the paper, that's when I mess up. So you'll notice that I messed up on that one. That's because I changed where I was paying attention to and I messed it up. So even though it's right in front of me and I can technically see it, it feels like I'm sewing blindly because I'm not looking at all at the stitches. This one is really tricky because it's just so tiny, but I wanted to sew on it, and I'm at the very end of my bobbin thread there. You can see that it's almost gone, and there's a bit of a loop sticking out, and that's going to cause a bit of a jam here. And that's just because my bobbin was not threaded properly. I left a little piece of thread hanging off of it or something. So I just have to fix that up. I'm hoping to not have to replace my bobbin in the middle of this project because I hate bobbins. So there we go. They're all done, and I'm actually pretty pleased with them. I thought in the worst case scenario, usually what happens is if I mess up on the first one, then I'll just make them all look messy and just purposely go really fast and really messy and even go back and forth to accentuate the messiness of it. But in this case, because they actually turned out okay, I'm pretty pleased with that. This is the first time I've been pleased with my own circles that I've sewn. So that's progress for you. It only took 10 years? No, I haven't been scrapbooking for 10 years yet. I started in 2009, so yeah, it's only been 7 years. So now that I've got all of my pattern papers with a dark ring around the outside of them, which is a look that I sort of lifted from Kelly Rayburn and the Scraptastic Kit Club members, I've got all of my papers sewn and having a very thick, bold black border around them. I'm ready to start putting things down. I wanted to layer the square with that circle in a way that top right-hand corner was kind of poking out onto the background paper. And so that was what I was looking at. And I didn't want it to line up exactly with the yellow stripe either. So I almost forgot to take off that manufacturing strip, but I remembered. And I'm going to place this one right here. I'm placing it almost exactly like that sketch, which is a little bit covered up with supplies, but there it is. Now you can see it a little bit better. I'm leaving a little bit more space here because I want to put some brads and buttons in that space below. So I'm just deciding where I'm going to place these things and grabbing my foam and my Amy Tangerine paper piercer. I try not to think too hard about placing these things. I find that sometimes I really labor and obsess over where I'm going to place things, and other times I just go with it, and it doesn't look much better or better at all when I obsess over it. So I try to just remind myself to just go ahead and poke the hole and put it in. So again, those chipboard pieces have adhesive backing on them, so I'm just taking it off to adhere them to the paper, and then I can poke the holes after it's adhered. And I'm going to move that over a little bit. Good thing I didn't poke the holes. Oh, I love it when I contradict myself. Yes, so I have some twine from my stash here. This is the only thing from my stash that everything else I believe came from the kit and that's, I think I said at the beginning, it's the November kit from Scraptastic. It's called Ain't No Sunshine. And I'm just threading it with a darning needle. These are not sharp needles. They're blunt and they have a really large hole in them. So look for a darning needle if you're going to be sewing on your scrapbooking project. It makes life a lot easier than trying to fiddle with a smaller hole and a sharp needle. So I am double sewing this one. I usually just go through it once, but the holes in these chipboard buttons are quite a bit bigger than the holes in regular buttons or in most regular buttons. So I decided to go through it twice. And here, what I'm trying to decide, the reason I'm hesitating is I thought about going up from the bottom and so actually going from the top and tying a bow on that button instead of sewing it in the traditional way, but I decided that would be a little bit distracting there. I really want to make this one look a lot more clean and crisp than some of my other layouts, and I think that a layout with this kind of a really bold, dark outline around all of the papers and all of the elements really lends itself to a clean, crisp finish. And that's why I'm not going to do any splatter on this one at all. So the only splatter is these buttons and little knickknacks that I'm placing. Knickknacks? They're not knickknacks, but you know what I mean. Little bippily bobbly things. I'm making up words as I go. Yeah, so then I decided to place a few more. This is the only part that's straying away from the sketch, so I'm putting a few more little circles here than what were in the sketch. It just kind of mimics, it just kind of reflects what's in the bottom portion of the layout a little bit better. Again, I'm double threading. I'm going to tie it real quick and cut it. See, those don't take as long as I always think they do. I'm always kind of hesitant to use buttons because I think, oh, I'm going to have to thread it and sew it and then tie it off. Really, it only takes a second, especially when you do everything 4 times as fast, right? So now I'm looking for the eyeglasses. If you watched my last scrapbooking process video, which I think was called #shop, if you watched that one, you saw me take out these glasses and say, no, my next layout is going to be about books, so I'm going to hang on to these glasses. So here they are. They're coming out. And I love this stack of books because it's perfect for this layout, which is about books. So I'm just playing around with how I'm going to use these books and these 2 sets of glasses. And yes, I've got a lot of glasses. I've got glasses in the pattern paper, and then I've got 2 glasses die cuts on this layout. And I don't even use glasses when I read. That's the funny part, but eventually I will, I'm sure. My husband already has reading glasses, so I'm sure I would benefit from using them, but I'm just hesitating on actually going through and taking that step. Yes, so my title here is going to be read more, not more read, read more. And I'm just putting it on wax paper and cutting it out so that I can play around with a couple of different compositions here. I was pretty sure I was going to put it here, but I wanted to have the option of trying it out in different places. But I like it so much here. I like how it's sort of like the title is bookends for my book. The book is in the middle, and then the title is on either side of it, and it's lined up right nicely, like bookends on a bookshelf. I already said that. Sorry. Ugh. I'm just blabbering here. These are Ellie's Studio letter stickers in a beautiful creamy yellow color, which is a little bit different than it's sort of the only creamy yellow on the page, so it's a little bit different than the pattern papers, but that's okay. I think it stands out nicely from the other things on the page. And I am going to outline it after it's on the paper. I'm going to kind of trace around the outside of it as a way of making it kind of blend in and go along with and here's my kitty. So, okay, I could have cut this part out when I edited this video, but I decided to leave it in for a specific reason, because I've lost 2 cats in the past year and a bit. Naomi passed away very, very recently, about 2 weeks ago. We had to put her down. And Maya and Naomi used to be in a lot of my layouts and a lot of my process videos. And I cut out a lot of the cat stuff in more recent process videos because I felt like it was sort of distracting, and I don't know, not everybody's a cat person. And I really kind of regretted that when Naomi passed away, because one of the things that I loved about looking at my old process videos after Maya passed away is that she was in so many of them. She was kind of like laying off to the side or playing around with my supplies. And I really regretted that when I kind of tried to do the same thing when Naomi passed away, and I had much, much less of her. I had cut her out of a lot of the footage for the reasons that I just said. So I'm gonna leave the kitty when she comes in, plays with me, and she's been a kitten, so I haven't let her in my scrapbook too often, in my scrapbooking room too often. But now that she's a year old and a bit, she's a year and a half now, she's a little bit more able to be in my scrap room. So I'm not going to cut her out every time that she comes in, because there might be a time when I'm going to like the fact that she has been in lots of my videos, although I hope that doesn't happen for a really long time. She's only a kitten. So here I'm just pop dotting this stack of books just to make it, well, the circle beside it is pop dotted, and I want the glasses to go across both of those. So just so that the glasses can sit flat, I'm going to pop up the books as well. It also gives them a little bit of interest, puts a tiny bit of a shadow around them. I'm using my Zig 2A liquid glue pen there, which is one of my favorite tools for using with skinny, thin, detailed die cuts that I need to place. So here I go. I'm just using my .005 pen, which is the thinnest pen I own, and it's a Prismacolor pen. And I'm just tracing my pen around the outside edges of all of these letter stickers. It's a very subtle effect, but it just gives them a little bit more emphasis. And what else do I have left to do? Oh, my journaling, of course. So I'm using my Chamel Gray journaling pen, and boy, my journaling is not the nicest. I kind of forgot that I was journaling on a layout for a minute there and just did messy handwriting. But here's what it says. In 2015, I only read 4 books, so I guess it will be easy to read more in 2016. But I want to really get into books the way I used to be before my PhD ruined me for reading. And then I put some hearts just to fill a little bit of space. They came out a lot darker than I wanted them to, but that's okay. So that's really all I need to say, but the whole idea is that I've really not been reading very much over the past probably 10 years, just because, I read so much before that, and it was like tortured reading that I didn't necessarily, a lot of it was very interesting, but some of it was really not interesting and not something I would have chosen to read if I wasn't working on my PhD. And so, like research studies and, who cares about that stuff? We care, but it's not fun to be reading that for hours and hours and hours on end. Anyhow, enough of that. I'm really, really loving reading for the first time in many years. And so I really want to keep this up I've read more in the past month than I have all year long. And my goal for 2016 is just to keep up the pace. So I'm halfway through another book. I finished that book right there in a week, the one that is in the layout. So the very last thing I'm thinking about here is this says Once Upon a Time. So it's sort of perfect for a book-related layout, but I can't figure out what I want to do with it. It would look okay there, but I really wanted this one to have those clean lines, so I decided to just leave it without. And I forgot to do the video part where I show the close-up, so you'll just have to look at these close-up pictures. I'm not sure that there's anything else that I wanted to say, but thanks so much for watching and following along. Feel free to leave me a comment. I love getting comments from you guys. And also, if you're interested in creative scrappers, you can check out the website. And I have a link to the shop where you can buy the ebooks. It's an Etsy shop. It's all in the information section for this video. So take care and have a really great scrappy week.